What was something you learned about yourself during your country's COVID-19 lockdown? I learned that I am actually disciplined enough to lose weight. I lost 60 pounds and I never thought I could do it. Despite having nowhere to go and no one to see, I still somehow managed to leave assignment deadlines to the last minute. I also drink too much caffeine. We must be the same person. I also think it's called really not liking your profession. Or online school burnout. When given a year to sit at home, I will spend most of it doing nothing but playing Stardew Valley. Once that gets really, thoroughly boring, I will eventually start painting. Currently churning out a smallish artwork nearly every day, shoot tier quality, but I'm learning and having fun. I really like being alive and healthy. That I have a greater capacity to keep myself sane, healthy, and happy than I previously believed, especially compared to others. I spent from mid-April to October unemployed due to furlough, layoffs at work, and while it wasn't the most fun experience, at no point did I dread the freedom of being able to do whatever I wanted every day. Meanwhile, up until about 2 months ago, I was on the opposite end of that spectrum. When I got approved to WFH in March, I was excited. I'm not an introvert, but I'm not an extrovert either. I could take or leave most of my co-workers, and was looking forward to a relaxed work environment at home. Fast forward to November, and I was in a fairly deep depression. I missed some of my co-workers immensely, and I was really missing seeing my boss. If my wife wasn't WFH, too, I probably would have asked to go back into the office. I not only thought that I was mentally tough enough to stay at home for months on end, but that I would relish it. Boy, was I wrong. On a positive note, I've emerged out of my depression and have learned to manage my isolation a lot better. That when lockdown ends I still don't want people coming near me. I never really have, and this confirmed it. I'm happier being left alone, thanks smiley face. The isolation and sensory deprivation has made my thoughts a kind of echo chamber. It gets really loud in here sometimes. I learned that I have a lot of painful thoughts and narratives I picked up through childhood trauma that continue to cause a lot of pain and dysfunction in my life. It's been a catalyst for me to uncover and rewrite those stories and transform my awareness and relationship to self. That the limit for sitting movement lesson pretending to pay attention is exactly 2 hours and 45 minutes. The last 15 minutes of the lecture is plain torture. I've found out exactly how much I hate other people. Living in a large city as compared to my upbringing in a fairly rural area had been a culture shock already when I first got moved to Monterey. But now with the lockdown and mask requirements I have found out how much I hate other people. With the COVID regulations pushed on me as a military member, it pissed me off to no end seeing people not taking COVID seriously. I don't actually engage with friends as much as I thought. I just always expected my friends to approach me, because I get nervous when trying to approach them. I'm now working on reciprocating more. I am not well equipped to be alone for long stretches of time. I'm very bad at being by myself. I was always able to avoid it by hanging out with friends constantly. But when I actually had COVID and had to spend 2 weeks shut in, I nearly killed myself. It was miserable. I've gone full existential. I feel like I am wasting my life away in lockdown, wanting to go back to normal. But I'm also not sure what normal I want to go back to. Hanging with friends, going out, etc. Isn't that also wasting time away? Do I want to go back to that, or should I really dive into my work and productivity? Is the point of life to be productive or to enjoy it? When this is all over, it'll be probably 1.5–2 years since it started. So, do I want to go back to what my life was like 2 years ago? I think in non-COVID times, I would have hoped to grow and develop over several years. I really enjoy my own company, so much so, my mental health improved and I am starting to beat my eating disorder. I've always been a cynical person. I kind of felt guilty about it. It is the shock of my adult life that I undersold it. That we are far more selfish and less empathetic than I ever imagined. That being asked to simply cover your mouth would be such an impossibly tall ask that it would literally cause fistfights. I learned I am not cynical enough. Humans are that awful. I get lonely fast. Isolation breaks my child. He's 13, and his mental health is circling the drain. His dad and I are trying so hard to get him what he needs. Counseling, meds, socially distanced time with friends. He's not doing the work in therapy, though. He's convinced that it won't work. It's hard and it's frustrating and we don't have a good answer yet. I've learned that as a mum, even one with a history of depression and anxiety, even as someone who's done my time in therapy, I can't fix my kiddo's brain. This sucks. I am a germaphobe. That I don't need friends to be happy and I can vibe by myself. My country didn't have a lockdown. There were driving restrictions and restrictions on hotels, restaurants and bars and other activities where crowds tend to occur and restrictions and protocols for shops and stores. People who were suspected were quarantined until tests proved negative. The quarantine was 12 days and sometimes it took as long to get the results as the quarantine. People who were listed as contacts of those who tested positive were quarantined. But no lockdown. What did I learn? Many things. That some people won't observe health protocols and thus endanger other people. That I was fine with shopping only once a week and staying home the rest of the time. That a lack of tourists, while horrible for the tourism businesses, was refreshing. That the only person responsible for protecting me is me. I'm mainly an introverted person, but this pandemic realized that there's a lot I want to get out and do. Whenever restriction lift, I want to travel. I really love being paid not to work. It's not necessary about my country, but I learned to stop listening to everything you read on the internet. Some articles like Lockdown 2026. Conventions are nowhere more are just fake shit made up for making money off of giving people severe anxiety. Turns out the best social media is not using a social media. Damn, my social life barely changed during COVID and I stay indoors all the time anyways. That having more time to do the things I want doesn't necessarily mean I'll do them. Help. I am flexible. I rely on others to keep me fit. For example, workout buddies, fitness classes, group rides and runs, etc. That threshold for mental health is a lot lower than I thought. I'm working on getting it under control. People are much more easily controlled than I thought. Conspiracy theorists are dumber than I thought to such an extent that I now think they are mad scientists without the intelligence and education. There's a lot more, but I am just rambling. That I'm bisexual. I really like weed and dancing. I am LGBTQ in some way, shape, or form. Being in a relationship is hard, especially if you feel disconnected with your emotions. And I like being alone, but I hate being lonely. I found out that my anxiety had a higher level that I had previously never reached. I learned that even with infinite time, I just really don't like cleaning. I'll do it, but I'll never like it. How many little conveniences that I took for granted. Going to a restaurant, running into the grocery store, hearing someone cough without feeling my stomach drop, booking a flight and just going somewhere. Another thing I learnt about myself is that I should be more grateful for what I have. I have access to tech and things like YouTube, Discord and Reddit have provided me with great support. That no matter what happens, I will keep moving forward. That the government does not care at all about people or their welfare. They only care of being kept on power, even if that means purposely withholding the vaccines from people only to give them when elections come. I procrastinate a lot. That I can sleep for 15 hours a day. That literally nothing changed for me. And once I realized that, big changes started happening. I'm actually quite capable of being an adult. I've gotten old, but matured along the way. I also learned to enjoy being by myself more without worrying about the need to be around people anymore. I hate working at home. When there is no clear distinction between home and work, you can't get out of work mode, and you just end up exhausted. I miss leaving the house, but I have no energy to do anything, because I can't switch off. Freaking hate it. I'm trans, MTF. That's basically it. Didn't change much for me, but I learned that a lot of people I know are way dependent on social interaction. Actually, the amount of phone calls and social media messages I started getting was alarming. Moffas must have been bored to tears to be reaching out to me. I can go 3 days without showering, unless I do exercise. That I'm a professional procrastinator and masturber. I care too much about everything, and I probably have social anxiety or just anxiety in general. I have severe depression. Absolutely nothing. I was classified essential and got stuck working more mandatory overtime than ever. I have less time for self-reflection and thanks to lockdown, less things to take my mind off the work. I haven't had a week under 50 hours since May. Last week was the first Saturday I got off in months unrelated to vacation. To anyone complaining about their abundance of free time, enjoy it while it lasts. I realized that all the times I apologized even when it wasn't my fault was just selling myself short and holding myself back. I'm not sorry for being me, that's what I'm best at.